Hello. Still no sound. Nope. There's no sound. There's no sound. No. There's sound. Is there a sound? Is there a sound? Okay. You guys there? You back? Any of you back? Okay, cool. Okay. How can I share now this to you people? So I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna first go. Beats me. I don't get it. Why it works now and why didn't before? Same settings, same everything. I restarted the thing. Um, okay, I'm gonna do this like this. Okay, so it works. Yeah, you hear something? So there, I can see that there are a few people showing up there. Let's hope you people will find this new link. So sorry, I'm a rookie. So, what can I say? Need to learn more. I need to check this thing somehow. But the problem is that, maybe I'm using the wrong software, but in this system, it looks exactly the same as it did before. There's a signal in the microphone thing there that is reacting to when I talk, and that's what it did before, but you guys didn't hear me and beats the, I don't know, beats me. I don't know. Okay, anyways, back in business. So, you remember last time I spilled some coffee on my keyboard, and after the stream was over, I used some compressed air to blow the keyboard as clean as I could. And most importantly, dry it. And still several keys stopped working. It just didn't work. Like the number 2 button didn't work and so on. So I thought I'd try some contact spray that we're using for guitars, for pots and for switches, to clean it and then blew some more compressed air to it, and voila, it works. Now it works. So, it's working. The just thought to share that in case one or two of you also has a tendency to spill things, which I do. But okay, I can see there are a few people there. Great, and more coming in. Good. Share. Thank you, Antti. Yes, I'm back. Yeah, so share to your friends. I'm here, doing my best. Hey, Jarkko, my old business partner from Tammela. Nice to see you here too. See your chat here. You're seeing me, I don't see you. Anyways, the topic today is tuning stability of the guitar. And to get this going, I'm going to first, I don't see you. No, I don't see you. Jarkko, no. So to get this going, I'm going to first do a full turnaround and blurt out the uncomfortable question to you before we go into the guitars, which is, are you in tune? And are you humble enough to observe your playing technique and analyze whether the tuning problem is in the guitar or in your technique? Like, is it possible that you use too much force when fretting notes? Because if your guitar has high frets, or so, I mean, you can press the frets, press the strings so much that you're going to be out of tune, no matter how well your guitar is set up and how well it's tuned up and everything. So everything. So high frets bring to my mind scalloped fretboards, and guys like Yngwie Malmsteen and Richie Blackmore, John McLaughlin and Blackmore, Yngwie, they all are using guitars with scalloped fretboards, and there are two reasons why they're doing that. One is that they can do like crazy bends with the help, or maybe three reasons actually. Yeah, three reasons. John McLaughlin uses it for doing kind of a Eastern Indian influenced sitar type effects on thin strings. So and then you also scalloped frets and high scalloped fretboard together with high frets. It makes it very easy to bend strings. But there's a third reason, which is that when you're playing a guitar like that, when you're playing high frets, and especially high frets plus scalloped fretboard, you just have to work on your technique so that you do not use any excess energy when you're pressing the strings to the frets. Because if you do, you're going to be totally out of tune. So you need only that strength to press the string to the fret, but not one bit more to stay in tune. Okay. So anyway, I'm the first one to admit that I'm not a great guitar player, and that some of the issues I sometimes imagine hearing in a guitar are in fact my shortcomings as a player. So I just wanted to say this out loud, that none of us, not even the greats, are perfect. And the only way to get better at what you do is to be humble about it. And practice. Yeah. So anyways, then we move on to the guitar itself. And here again, like it is about tone, about playability, or any feature in a guitar, in your guitar, it is essential to know your instrument before you can make much conclusions. So it kind of goes around, comes around. And so now we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the common tuning issues and learning more about your instrument and how to fix those issues. Well, some tips will come with the video, whereas other fixes require dedicated videos with proper close-ups. It doesn't really work as a streaming thing like that. So it would need to be like a dedicated video made for that purpose. But to make things crystal clear. But in the meanwhile, before I get to do those videos, we have a long to-do list here. There must be a ton of videos by others in YouTube about these things in a variety of expertise, and there must be really good ones. And I'm sorry, I don't have time to watch those things much, so I can't point you into any specific direction right now. So if somebody has great ideas to who makes the best guitar setup and tuning stability videos on YouTube, put it on the chat. Yeah, I don't have such videos yet. We have a on our website. There's a, if you go to the support section of our website, there is an article called what is it called? Maintenance guide, I think. And there is in text format, there is an article about setup and with pictures, but I know video would do it better. So, okay. So let's go. And before that, remember to subscribe the channel, despite the technical challenges in the beginning. Support me, the rookie YouTuber here, and like the video if you like it. If you don't like it, if you hate it, press the unlike button. Those are welcome too. So let's go. So your guitar doesn't stay in tune, and it's not you. It's not your playing. You're sure that your guitar doesn't stay in tune. So where to look, what to do? Well, the very first thing, the strings. The strings. When have you changed the strings? That's the very first thing. Old strings don't stay in tune. Period. Very simple thing. Old strings don't stay in tune. They're also impossible to intonate right. So if you tune your guitar right for the open chords, and you have very worn down and dirty strings, it won't play in tune on the higher frets. The chords won't play in tune. It's just impossible. So first thing, change strings. Thank you, Jonathan. Good job, new YouTuber. I appreciate your honesty. Well, so anyways, okay, let's assume you have changed the strings. So when you've changed the strings, did something change? Did you change the string gauge? Because if you change the string gauge, there might be an issue, especially if you change to heavier gauge, because now your nut slots are too tight and the strings kind of hang to the nut slots, and maybe that's the reason why your guitar doesn't stay in tune. And then about changing strings, this is now something that, with my experience, 25 plus years as a not only guitar maker but repairing guitars, that I'm seeing all the time around me. And that's why I want to point this out. And this is going to be also the first videos, dedicated videos about setup, that I promise that whenever we have the time, I will do a few videos that will clarify this thing. And I'm talking about now, how do you wind the strings to your tuner posts? You know what I mean? When you put the new string to the tuner post, how do you wind it there? Of course, depends on the type of the tuner. If you have a, let's call it now, in the lack of a better term, a Gibson type, traditional Gibson type tuner that has the tuners have posts that have holes in them, and you put the string through the hole, and then you wind the string around the post. So how do you do that? I can tell you that there are so many ways to do it wrong. and only one or maximum two ways, in my opinion, to do it right. And when you do it right, you eliminate a lot of problems regarding tuning stability. But it doesn't work. I can't explain to you in this video how to do that, because even if I would show it to you, the live stream picture quality, and I can't do close-ups here with my primitive setup here, and so we can't do it now, so it needs to be another video. But yeah, so there is definitely another thing for you to look at. I know that a lot of players wind their strings to the posts wrong, bad. So and I don't know how you wind yours, so you need to look at it, you need to observe it, and you need to be, again, humble about it. That if you really know that you're doing it the right way, and there's no way that the string can slip in the tuner post the way you put it there, then fine. But otherwise, be critical about how you're doing it. Yeah, and okay, then we move on. We move on to the next possible reason why your guitar doesn't stay in tune. And this should be obvious, but I know that a lot of players are not interested in the technical side of things, and that's fine, and it's supposed to be that way. It's you don't have to, you don't need to. And if you're not, and your guitar doesn't stay in tune, take the guitar to a pro. Take the guitar to a pro and have him explain these things to you. But this is going to get quite technical. I'll try to keep it as kind of commonsensical as possible. But there are friction points. I'm going to excuse now, just for 15 seconds. I'm going to grab a guitar. I forgot to bring a guitar to this room, so I'll grab a guitar. Okay, this is an old guitar from the 90s, but it doesn't matter. It's the same. The old guitars are kind of the same with the fundamentals. So somebody's asking here, Damian, can you explain what happens when the saddle is too narrow when changing to thicker strings? I actually kind of already did. So when you change to, I can be a little bit more detailed. So when you change to heavier strings, very often the knot slots have been made for certain string gauge. Our guitars, for example, are made, if the customer doesn't wish something else, the kind of default string gauge for our guitars when they ship is 1046, and that's how we do the knot. And if somebody then changes 1149, 1150 set to the guitar, the knot slots are going to be tight, and they're not going to slide well back and forth in these slots. And when you're tuning up, there's friction. And that's what I was going to talk about. So the friction points, that's very potential if your guitar is strung up the right way and your playing technique is fine, and so on and so forth. the friction points that the strings can move over when you're tuning it up, or when you as you're playing the guitar. Those are the potential places where one needs to look at next. And there are some tips that you can, very common thing is that when you tune up a string and then you hear a kind of click sound somewhere, most often it's the nut. And that should tell you that, that nut slot is too tight when it makes that sound when you're tightening the string, you're tuning it up. And one trick to fix this at home is to take a piece of string. If you're using, the same gauge strings that you're using, let's say you're using 1046 strings. So you can take, if your D string, which in 1046 strings would be 026, then you take that string, piece of that string, and you kind of rub that piece of string back and forth in the nut slot without adding any substance to it. You could also have something at hand, like there are commercial products for that. What is that one stuff that has a bit kinky name? That nut sauce that you can buy. Nut sauce. It doesn't sound so right, but it's meant for guitars. Google it, try to find it. Anyways, you could put some of that to that piece of string that you're rubbing it in the nut slot, and then you notice that it starts kind of moving easier in the tight slot, and then the guitar will stay in tune better. Another very kind of easy trick that you can do that is especially helpful with the plain strings, with the, in this case, 17, 13, and 10 in my guitar, in this guitar. So you could take again a piece of string, but this time you could make some marks to that string with a piece of sandpaper. Let's say like 320 sandpaper or something like that. It doesn't make such a big difference. Not very coarse sandpaper, but you make kind of this way, you make some marks to that string, you kind of, so that the string itself becomes sort of like a little disposable little file in a way. So then you rub that coarse feeling string that you've made some sand marks to, then you rub that back and forth in the nut slot, and that's also an easy way to do it, even on the road. If you have in your case a piece of sandpaper for whatever reason, I don't know why would you have, but you should. This is, by the way, a tip that I learned from one of my luthiers. So it's not, again, very rarely this wisdom that in this instance or this occasion comes out from my mouth. It's not my original wisdom or something like that. But it's good to take advice, when you hear good advice. So one of my luthiers actually mentioned to me about this. Yanni, I don't know if you're there, but you're the one who mentioned that that's what you do with the strings. And I was thinking, hey, that's great. I've never thought about it. This is not even very long time, maybe a couple of years back or something like that. So anyways, so this is one friction point that you have in your guitar. If you have a Telecaster or Strat style guitar, you might have a string tree here that typically the two thinnest strings, the E and the B string, go under. And there's another friction point. So that might cause your tuning instabilities. And especially if it is a guitar that has a certain type of string tree that presses the strings to a very steep angle down. Because the only meaning of that string tree is, you know, to give just about enough angle to that 6-in-line headstock that they don't make any funny noises here, resonate, or that they stay in the nut slots. That's the meaning of the string tree. It doesn't need to have any more angle than that. So there's another friction point. And then you have yet another friction point here. In this guitar, it is the bridge because there's a separate tailpiece. So when the strings cross over the bridge saddles, there's another one. And if these slots here are tight, it might cause the same problem. It might also cause commonly string breakage if these are badly shaped. Often with factory guitars, they aren't really shaped. There's just a little mark so that the string stays in place, but that's not good. If that's the case in your guitar, you should take it to someone who can expertly shape the saddle slots here so they're not sharp from the front edge and they're the right size for your set of strings, so the guitar stays in tune better. These are common for Les Pauls. So Les Pauls could have problem here, it could have a problem there at the nut. And a guitar with Kahler also has a kind of rollers or Bixby equipped guitars. Also, the strings are moving much over the string saddles, and there's another potential issue there. Somebody mentioned here, wait, I'm hoping that Emma is taking down all these questions. There's coming, well, there's not that many questions, okay. But somebody's saying here something that kind of caught my eye. How can one use tremolo bar like Jeff Beck and stay in tune without a Floyd Rose? Very good point. Very good question. And I like that question because it's also here in my notes. But let's see. So an answer to that question is coming. Damien is saying it. My tricks doesn't work for 45 to 105, 65 to 130 bass strings. That's true. Bass strings are so kind of, the winding is so big in those strings that it doesn't work. You could try the sandpaper trick that I mentioned, Damien. You could try that as a you know, like a home trick. But other than that, I would take it to someone. I would take the instrument to someone who can do that little bit of tweaking to the nut slots. That's not something that, I mean, okay, there might be somebody here or people here watching this live stream that are repairing guitars, building guitars. That's a different thing. But for a player who doesn't want a hobby of repairing guitars, that's, I think, where the line goes. If you need to tweak or fine tune the nut slots of your guitar or bass, it's a good idea to take the instrument to your guitar tech. Or if you don't have one, find one, because it's a whole, the learning curve of that skill. I mean, you need special tools that are not cheap to do it right, and you're gonna screw up a number of nuts before it will come fine. You're gonna file the nut slots too low and so on. So, but anyway, I mean, if you wanna learn another ball game, go for it. Do it. Okay, let's see. Here we are. Okay, I'm going to mention one detail here, and then we're going to go to that Jeff Beck question. So if your guitar has a floating tremolo with knife edge posts, we're talking about the 2-post type of non-locking whammy bar like Jeff Beck has, or a Floyd Rose. So if you have that, you have the knife edges. Where was I? Here. Wait. Sorry. Yeah. So anyway, the posts in those knife edges, either the posts or the knife edges of the base plate of the whammy bar can be worn down, and this might cause also problems. Or again, with a whammy bar guitar, the vibrato springs can be old and tired, and maybe they need to be changed. There's some kind of pretty common things that can be looked at. But okay, so let's go to that a bit deeper. So we have the situation. It could be a traditional this story, or this kind of this story works for both ways. Either a non-locking floating tremolo with 2 posts, or with 6 wood screws, like the traditional Stratocaster bridge or any equivalents, like we're using a lot, the Goto VSVG vibrato, or of course there are like countless different kind of versions of those things. So there is this kind of myth about the whammy bars, that the guitar stays better in tune when the whammy is set so that it rests on the body. In other words, it's not floating, it's resting on the body. When you're not using it, it's resting on the body. And this myth is not true. Or well, if you don't use the vibrato at all, if you've screwed off or pulled off the trem bar and thrown it away and you never use your tremolo, then it's true that it does stay better in tune when the springs are tightened, or you can even kind of block it or do whatever so the thing doesn't move at all. So if you're not using it at all, block it, put their 5 strings, tighten them, and it's better off that way. But if you're hoping that you would kind of be better in tune by, tightening the springs or adding 1 spring so that the base plate of your tremolo sits on the top when you're not using it, and you can still use it for nice down bends, and you're hoping that this is like the optimal situation to keeping your guitar in tune, it's not really true. And I'll try to explain to you why. Now, when you're strumming that chord on a guitar with that whammy bar, let me get another guitar, just a second. Okay. Yeah, so here we have a guitar. Don't pay attention to that funny looking pickup. Looks weird. I don't know what it is. Anyways, I have here a whammy bar that is set floating. And now think of the situation. You have let's imagine the bass plate is resting on the top. I take a note and I do a dive. And I come back up. And what happens here? Okay, for sure, if there's nothing really funny going on, the tremolo bass plate will return to the same position that it was. Yes. But what happens at the nut? The string loosens and it kind of moves over the nut a little bit. Maybe it can't be seen with plain eyes, but with, magnified, definitely. The move loosens, it moves over the nut, and then you just release it back to your zero position, so to speak, and you continue playing. And there's a good chance that the note will be sharp that after that dive. Whereas if you would have had a little bit floating tremolo, you could move it the other way too. And the playing action often is like that. When you're kind of moving around with the whammy bar, when you're doing things with it, you're doing things both ways, you continue playing, then there's a better chance that these friction points will find their best balance easier, meaning that your guitar remains in good tuning when there is room for the trem to go both ways. And now we go to the Jeff Beck thing. So Jeff Beck is famous, kind of like I've heard these same stories of many really experienced, like godlike players. There's a story about Jeff Beck that he went to a studio and he picked up a guitar from the corner, a dusty guitar with old strings, completely out of tune, and started to play, recorded a track, and put it back there, and somebody else took the guitar and it was impossible to play. It was so out of tune and so horrible that it couldn't be played. But in Jeff Beck's hands, maybe a myth, I don't know, but it's true that a really skillful player who has experience with the instrument called electric guitar or acoustic guitar can work around these things, and they always stay in tune, even though the guitar wouldn't be in tune. It's intuitive. They do it with their fingers. They do it however they do it. I'm not good enough to tell you any tips on that. So ask from somewhere else or watch some other videos. But yeah, it's something that often comes to me also. It's kind of a typical scenario actually with an inexperienced player who might feel that there's something wrong with the guitar, brings it to the shop to be repaired, to be do setup, and then I notice in the situation when I asked the customer to show me, the player to show me what kind of problems there is, and when I notice that this player is inexperienced and doesn't kind of I can see it from the playing technique that part of the reason is now there. then there's no shortcuts, of course. And I try to be honest in those situations, and I explain as it is, not, of course, try not to hurt anybody's feelings, because hey, we're all, even the greatest players have started, and they've been rookies too. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just kind of good to know that okay, look, hey, the guitar seems to be pretty okay, but there's these kind of things that might make you feel that the guitar doesn't stay in tune. So anyway, would you give me a moment and I will look at the questions a little bit. There's quite a few. Alex is there. Hey, Alex from Italy. Hello. Seventh son from Brazil. Whoa. Ikalinen is here again. Shaggy's Faction. That's a weird name you have, mister. Boston 81 here again. Just finished to work. Great. Okay. So what is here? Ville, any thoughts about James Taylor using tuning using cents? -12, E, -10, -8, -4, -6, -3. Are there any benefits as it is intended for two acoustic guitars? Well, what James Taylor is doing, honestly, I didn't know he uses these offsets. There are all kinds of offsets that different players use, and it's based on their experience, how they hear their instrument best, the most in tune. And the sort of basic way of setting intonation to 0, tuning the strings to 0, it's a beginning, and then you can start sugaring it up and tweaking it to your taste from that on, if you want to go to those nuances, if you want to go find those nuances. One commercially applied version of this is the Bass Phyton tuning system. And I mean, I can't say James Taylor, I mean, those are pretty heavy offsets, and to me it kind of feels like if he's playing such heavy offsets with the tuning, he might hit the guitar very hard and he might have the strings set very high. But that's just my hunch, because that's kind of where it goes typically, that if somebody has the strings set high, it might need a different sort of a intonation setup than guitar with lower action. But there's an endless way of doing this, and a lot of players have been doing different kinds of offsets for intonation for ages and ages and ages, and also a lot of luthiers, guitar makers are doing different kinds of things to make the tuning better, the tuning all across the fretboard better, like we've been doing from the beginning, the compensated knot position that helps the open strings, the open chords. Well, not really, not the open chords, but more, well, open chords, yes, because it kind of helps the first, let's say, first, second, and fret, third, maybe fourth fret notes to be better in tune. Yeah, so I'm not really an expert with James Taylor's tuning offsets, but I'm sure he knows what he's doing. And I'm also sure that if somebody else does it for his guitar just off the bat, like, okay, James Taylor is doing like that, I'm going to do it too, it might not work because your playing technique is different. Tuomas, hey Tuomas, the strings, what about bass guitar? I mean, I had years a bass lent from my friend, and the only thing I was asked that was that never change the strings, and the bass strings were from the 70s. Yeah. there's another proof to the fact that whenever anybody blurts out a rule like I did, change the strings, then somebody comes out and says that, hey, you can't change the strings because you ruin the sound. And this could be true. I'm not, whatever floats your boat, baby, go for it. I think, I remember, I have a little story. I was visiting Lauri Porra. You know Lauri Porra? He's I don't know how you English people would pronounce his name. Lauri Porra, maybe. Stradivarius bass player. I was visiting his place years ago, and we were at that time working on some bass developments, and I had this unique experience visiting Lauri's home. And yeah, we were at the time trying to kind of decide whether our 5-string steam bass should be by default 35 or even 36-inch scale length, and I wanted Lauri's opinion on that, and I went with 2 basses with those scale lengths, otherwise as identical as we could make them, and to just get his feedback. And and we sat in his living room, and he played Jean Sibelius' Valse Triste. Personally, to me, twice. First with the 35 and then 36-inch scale bass. And I cherish that moment. Thank you, Lauri. That was fantastic. I love you for that, for doing that. And we got also valuable feedback. And our 5-string bass ended up being 35-inch scale. Okay. But yeah, and what was the question again? Sorry, this is me. I get lost. Somebody would need to kick my butt, but I think Emma is putting our 8-year-old son to bed, and she's not there kicking my butt, so you need to listen to these stories. Yeah, I'm gonna put this guitar away. And anyways, when I was visiting Lauri that time, he has an old precision bass from the 60s, I think. And this is exactly the same case as you, Tuomas, were mentioning there. So mentioned, that's the way. You, Tuomas, mentioned it earlier in the chat. So Lauri told me that these strings haven't been changed ever since he got the bass, because it has a special sound. And whenever he goes to studio to record certain kind of stuff, probably not Stradivarius, but Lauri has done so much more other beautiful music. Check his solo albums. They are something. Lauri's music is something. You need to check it out. First to Spotify, and then buy the CDs or even vinyls if there's vinyls. I always buy vinyls if it's possible, to support the musician. And if there's no vinyl, I buy CD anyway. Yeah, when Lauri goes to studios with that bass, the recording engineers have given him the advice. Kind of the rule is that do not change the strings for that bass, because otherwise you screw up that sound, and that sound works great for a lot of stuff. So it's true. There might be some issues with that, with the intonation and tuning of that bass, but I don't know. We would need to ask Lauri that. In studio, you can work around it anyway. You can record things in parts. Okay, so where are we now? Let's see if I find some other questions here. Poo Ninja is here. Can't stay, but I'll catch the repost and throw a thumbs up now. Do that. Have a great weekend. You too. Have a great weekend. We'll hear from each other, I'm sure. Stratamania says, Jeff Beck, it has an LSR nut apart from anything else. Yes, that's true also. Jeff Beck has an LSR nut. And that thing works well up to a point when it's really well maintained. When it gets dirty and stuff, it typically doesn't work so well. In my experience, it's much easier to make a bone nut stay better in tune in a non-locking whammy bar. We've been doing these systems for a lot for professional players that use their whammy bars a lot for heavy bending and stuff. So anyway, that's my take on it. And Stratamania continues. Beck has 2-post trem. Yeah, like I mentioned, also tends to tweak it while playing. That helps it be in tune. Exactly. So that's what they do. That's what players do. They kind of all the time they play and go with it. You know, if you listen to Jimi Hendrix recordings, live recordings, and everything, he's not in tune all the time, but he still makes it sound great. So there are so many ways to kind of, you know, when you have enough hours under your belt playing guitar, it becomes your second nature. And then keeping the guitar in tune also becomes an intuitive thing. You don't think about it. You don't. Yeah, I think it's like that. And hey, Jeff Beck is, you know, there's God, and then there's Jeff Beck above God. So, yeah. Hey, Francisco, Fran Fret Guitars. Have you listened about dinner guide for the 2 thinner strings in the 6-in-line headstock? Hello, Fran. Go check Fran Fret Guitars, my good friend from Spain. Hello to Rosa also. I don't know if you're listening there or watching. Dinner guide. No, I don't know that. Thank you, Fran, for telling me. I will look at that later. I don't have time to look at it now. But could be, you know, there's always cool inventions coming. So it's good to stay on top of that. That's why it's good to have friends too, who give you tips, like Fran gave me a tip to me who haven't known about dinner guide. I'm embarrassed. Ari Hentunen. Hey, Ari. Good quality tremolo is easy way to get tuning stability guitars with Grammy. Whammy. Agree. Yeah, of course. Good quality trem is it helps, of course. And the less moving parts there is sort of that can move and stay in a bad position after. Yeah, of course. A good quality trem helps. Jose, hi, Master Juha. Does the action affect tuning stability? Low action, high action? Not really. No. It's more about the way you set up your guitar. It's surprising to me that I'm gonna use here as an example my friend Mika Tyyskä, Mr. Fastfinger, who, you know, he's very fast. He's very fast fingers, literally. And he plays with surprisingly high action in his guitars. And like every time I see his guitars, they are surprisingly high. Okay, then we adjust them for him from time to time, and he says that, oh, now it's better. But then the next time I see the guitar, it has kind of shifted higher again, and he feels comfortable with it like that. And so you can play fast with low action, you can play fast with high action, and when your guitar is set up accordingly to the action you prefer, then there shouldn't be any tuning stability issues there, regardless of the action. Desafinados, great tips. Cheers from Spain. Hola, hola, desafinados. How do I say this? Koirus sobri. How do you set up a tremolo to be responsive and soft with 7 strings guitar with drop tuning drop? With fairly light strings with 10 to 60. Well, this begins, I mean, this is a question again that would require, it's a specific case that would need that guitar to be looked at and how to do it. If you want it to be responsive and soft, I think the keywords here are responsive and soft. You would maybe want to go as little amount of springs as you can while keeping the spring adjustment still in kind of in the range that you have adjustments left, so they aren't kind of screwed all the way in. It could be 3 springs for this string gouge with 7 strings guitars. It might be 4 springs. Depends also a little bit about the springs, because there are springs with different tension, so those are also different. But try with, you know, if you want to soften up and make your guitar more responsive, try to removing 1 spring from your current setup and tightening the springs accordingly, so that you get back to the balance point where, because remember, the springs are pulling your, okay, this is not a whammy bar guitar, but the strings are pulling the bridge of your guitar this way. So if you have a whammy bar, they're going to pull the whammy bar up. Your spring tension is going to pull the whammy bar up, and your springs on the back of the guitar are the counterforce for that. And the ideal situation in a locking whammy bar, which I somehow assume that we're talking about here with this 7-string guitar. I don't know if my intuition is right, but anyways. So the optimal situation here would be that we have the guitar in tune, the desired tune, whatever tuning you want to do. The guitar is in tune, and at the same time, the base plate of your whammy is parallel to the strings, so it's flat like that. So it's not up like that or sitting deep in the cavity like that, so it's flat. And you achieve that by adjusting the springs on the back accordingly, so that the string tension and the counterforce, the spring tension, equal out while keeping the base plate flat. So you need to do a lot of back and forth, back and forth. You retune the guitar, you adjust the springs, you retune the guitar, you have a cup of coffee, you smoke a cigarette. If you smoke, don't smoke cigarettes. That's a bad habit. But anyway, if you have to do it, do it. If you're going to lose your nerve, then go back to it, back and forth, until you are in a situation where the springs and the strings are equaling out so that the whammy base plate sits in the right position. And yeah, and if you can't get it done, if you tighten those springs all the way in there and you can't tighten them anymore, and still the base plate is kind of raising up, it means you have too little amount of springs, or springs with not enough tension in them. So you need to add one spring at that time. But yeah. Okay, let's see what else. Shaggy's Faction asks, you use a lot of ABM hardware. They also do this adjustable brass nut that has screws under the strings. Any experience? I have good experience with those in several guitars with tuning stability. Yeah, could be good. I have here one of those. I haven't put it into a guitar yet. I have one of those here. The one thing that I feel a bit uneasy about it is I'm always thinking simple is better, less moving parts is better, because when something is adjustable, there's screws under the strings, there is something that can move. It often works well new. But after 6 months or 1 year, something happens. It doesn't move anymore. There's dirt in it or whatever, or it starts resonating, making funny sounds. That's why the LSR nut that Jeff Beck still uses, that's why it's not, I don't know if it's made anymore, but it has never become very popular, because those have a lot of issues with the moving parts. They tend to be fine in the beginning, but then not. So we have actually, over the years, we have removed a lot of different kinds of roller nuts of different types, different makes, brands, from guitars that there was a trend at some point of time, in the end of 80s, right in the early 90s, turn of the decade, the LSR thing came, and it was popular for a moment, and then the problem started, and people started abandoning it. Same happened with things like what was it called? Tremsetter. I think Hipshot still makes that device, but it never became very popular because it's another kind of a whammy stabilizing tool, or stabilizing gadget that you put into the spring cavity, replace one of the springs with it, and it gives your guitar sort of like a 0 point, kind of a pivot point, and it kind of, you can do down bends and up bends around it, and then it just returns to that pivot point. And while it does that, it makes a sound, clock, 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 and also it has these little adjusting screws that, when it's not maintained all the time, daily, weekly, monthly, it doesn't work very well. Okay, somebody says you can still get LSRs. The original Beck Strats had a Wilkins. Yeah, the wider one that had kind of first roller, that the string went over, and then a second one that it went under. And it's very interesting that Jeff Beck is using that and can make it work. It beats me, because there's so steep angle there with the strings that often in time there comes problems. But we know that Jeff Beck is very good with mechanics. Whenever he's not playing guitar, he's building muscle cars or whatever crazy machines on the countryside in the UK. So, I would love to see how he maintains the LSR functional. And I'm not saying it can't be. I mean, I'm sure it's good. Stratomania, I have an LSR guitar on a guitar with a Floyd non-fine tuner. It works well. Great. Good to hear that it works well. So forget about all my advice. Throw them to the bin. and continue on your path. I mean, you're right. If it works, you're right. You know, I'm not here sharing advice that nullifies your experience of functioning solutions to problems. There are always many paths, many ways of doing it. I'm talking about my experience. Maybe it's biased, and because we've been fixing guitars and because there's so much issues with something that still for some players work great. So yeah. Okay. Jonathan, what is leeway on the scale length? I want to make sure I don't go too far over measurement. I don't know. I don't understand your question. Sorry. It's my English. I just don't understand it. Poo Ninja, due to the magic of a charged cable, I'm back now. Welcome back. Mibu, you're back. Great. Okay, so I'm going to talk about now since we've now kind of we've touched the topic on the locking whammies, the Floyd Rose type or one of the equivalents. Let's look at another situation that I have run across a number of times. And when we're talking about a Floyd Rose or similar double locking whammy, it means that the strings are locked at the nut, of course. They're not locked at the nut and at the bridge. So earlier we talked about friction points, nut and string tree and things like this, that where the string moves over when you're tuning, when you're playing. But in a Floyd Rose guitar, there is no friction points like that. It's just that vibrating string. It's locked from both ends. It's just the vibrating string there. And so the possible reasons for not staying in tune are limited to less possibilities than in some other guitars. In a double locking whammy, it's often the knife edges. We talked about that already. Either the posts or the pivoting edges or the Floyd base plate, or both, or the springs, like we talked about, old springs, or this is also unfortunately quite common, that the unit can be poorly installed. And this can mean several things, but often enough there is a friction point somewhere where there shouldn't be, meaning that the body of the Floyd, of the locking whammy thingy, touches somewhere in the routing while you're using it. So it rubs against the walls of the routing, or the springs rub against the bottom of the spring cavity routing, or things like this. The sustain block rubs against something. This kind of things can happen. And if this is going on, it won't stay in tune, because when you do something, it's gonna change position. It's supposed to be floating, and when you have good springs, when you have fresh strings, except Tuomas, who has the strings from the 70s, and Lauri, now I lost my thought, but yeah. So anyway, if there is no friction point, if the unit is installed, mounted as it should, and there's no screw ups there, it should stay in tune. But and let's assume here that even the knife edges and the pivot points, everything is fine, and the player can still experience that the thing doesn't stay in tune. It could be a quality bridge. It could be like the Goto locking whammy that we use a lot for certain reasons. I like it better over others for certain reasons. But the Floyd Rose, the good ones, the quality ones are good. Ibanez has good locking whammy bridges also, and but still, more often that you would think, you can experience this, that it feels like it doesn't quite stay in tune. But what I've noticed is that in some cases it's kind of unreasonable what people are expecting. And again, this kind of leans towards inexperienced players. And there's no critic here, just saying, whether you're inexperienced or not, whether you understand your instrument deeply enough, that's for you to evaluate in as humble way as possible. Remember, every guitarist, the very best, they've been beginners at some point. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's inevitable. That's how it is. And being a beginner is nothing to laugh at, but to fully support and help. So if you see a beginning guitarist struggle with these things, help. He needs help. So we get more guitarists. We don't want him to drop his instrument and, start playing video games. We want him to keep playing, right? So help the poor guy. Also, I'd like to say that experience is not calculated in years that you've owned a guitar. That's not experience. I've owned guitars for longer than I'd like to admit, but still I'm not an experienced guitarist. My experience comes from another angle, from repairing, and yeah, I know about these issues and things, but as a guitarist, I wouldn't count myself being, even after all these decades that I've been playing guitar whenever I have the chance for it. But no, it's all the hours that you've dedicated to playing, to sort of meditating your instrument, or kind of getting under the skin of your guitar, or letting your guitar under your skin, so you become one, and you start understanding each other in a deeper way. So let's go back to that Floyd Rose problem. So I often notice a very specific situation. I'll explain. So you have the guitar plugged into a guitar tuner. We're talking about the Floyd guitar, or we can talk. Actually, this goes to any guitar. This goes to your Les Paul. It goes to your Strat, Tele, whatever. You have the guitar plugged in. Okay, it goes to any guitar to a certain extent. Use common sense. Teles don't often have whammy bars, but it's still the mechanics of this phenomenon that I'm explaining here are the same in every guitar. So the example was a Floyd, the guitar, and you plugged into a tuner, and you do a dive bomb. Oh, you come back, and then you immediately check. After you've done the dive bomb, did all the strings stay in tune? And I can guarantee most often it appears that they are not 100% in tune that moment after that dive bomb. But if you would continue playing the guitar just a few seconds after that dive bomb, and then you measure them, there's way higher chance that the guitar is now in tune again. So after heavy action, either downbend or upbend, it takes a moment for things to settle again. the springs, the strings, the neck, everything. I mean, you do a dive bomb and all of a sudden you kind of release tension from the neck of the guitar. And a lot of things move, a lot of things change for that instant. It's like a shock for the neck, and it's a shock also for the strings and the springs. Because all of a sudden their tension is gone. Okay, the springs are kind of like tightened when you're doing a down bend. They are tighter all of a sudden, and then you release it, and everything, it takes a while. So it might sound to you kind of like a you know, esoteric thought. This thing that your guitar neck or the strings might be confused for a split second before it comes back, you know, comes back in tune. But try for yourself. I can tell you I've done it so many times. I know what I'm talking about. And a piece of advice, it's not probably the best idea to try analyzing your guitar tuning stability or trying to find a fault. Trying to kind of, you know, there must be a fault. So in this way that you're doing a dive bomb and then you're checking, oh no, it's not in tune. I got to complain to Facebook about it. You know, breathe. Have a coffee. Pick up the guitar again. Take it easy. It's just a guitar. You know, life goes on. And seriously, this is the way it works. Yeah, I'm gonna look at, we're actually way over 1 hour now. Lucky Lick says, great topic, important to understand. I'm hoping that you're referring to my last topic I talked about, because I'm, you know, your chat comes kind of out of sync with what I'm saying here. But Beck is Beck. Stratomania, I look after it. Great. When you look after your LSR, it's great. Yeah. Shaggy's Faction. My experience, 25.5 inch scale length stays in tune better than 2475 because it has slightly more tension. This is something that I would also underline to a certain extent, that it is easier to make a longer scale length instrument to stay better in tune. Often it is about the relationship, about what string gauge do you choose for each instrument. But it's true. A Les Paul with 1046 scale, the G string can be challenging to stay in tune. And here, things like winding your string the right way. There's all the wrong ways, and then there's the right way that I'm going to make a video for you about. These kind of little things to kind of optimize everything, and you can make it work. But yeah, Shaggy's Faction is correct. Other guitars are more challenging, which doesn't make them, in my opinion, worse guitars, because it's more about, it's a conceptual thing about I mean, I can't get over it. My first love with electric guitars was Les Paul, and I can't get over it. I've played those guitars since I was a teenager with short scale length, and those remain to be my favorite guitars. And there is something about them in my muscle memory, in my spine, everywhere, that just makes me feel more at home. Personally, for me, when I play guitar. But And as you understand, this doesn't mean that short scale guitars are better because I said so. For me, but for somebody else, hey, we're all individuals, except that one guy in the Spinal Tap movie, not Spinal Tap, sorry, now I'm mixing movies. Life of Brian, Monty Python, Life of Brian. That one guy in that movie, he's not an individual, but the rest of us are. Yeah. Okay. I'm seeing here questions that I haven't answered. Koiru Sobri is asking, what are my favorite bridges and tremolos? You can actually find some of that stuff from our website. There is a, when you go, when you go to our website, ruokangas.com, there is a section called specifications, specs. And you can find there a bunch of articles. And there is an article that I think is called, maybe it's called Bridge Talk. I have written an article about some of my favorite bridges there, which doesn't mean there aren't other ones that can be every bit as good or better. If there's better ones, I haven't tried them. I have tried a lot, and I have my kind of own set of priorities how I choose bridges for different purposes. So those can be also different for different players and different guitar makers and factories. They can have different priorities, reason to choose a certain bridge. I have certain priorities. You can actually understand a lot about that article if you take the while to read it. It's a pretty long article. It covers a lot of stuff. And people don't read these days so much. They just watch these YouTube videos. It's a good idea to read, people. Go read. Read a book. A paper book, even though it's maybe environmentally, I don't know what is environmentally better than the other, but reading a paper book is still, it's the best user interface when reading for a number of reasons. Let's talk about that in another chat. And there are questions I have not answered. But Emma is writing down all those questions, and we're going to go back to those at one point or another, sooner or later. Yeah, thank you so much for being here with me. This is my third ever live stream on YouTube, and this time we experienced first time some serious technical difficulties in the beginning. I'm glad that we got it figured out, but yeah. It's hard work, this YouTuber stuff. So I'm supposed to say now, subscribe. What else? Like this video, share to your friends, and I'll be back next Wednesday. I think this is called Weekly Wednesday Live Q&A. That's what my friend Junnu told me to call it. So that's what it's called. Okay, and I thank you for your time. Thank you, everybody. I see there also people that I haven't even said hello to, but hello to all of you too. And thank you. I'll be back next time. Cheers. Take care. Stay safe.